You've heard the theory. Poor people make bad decisions. They spend when they should save. They borrow when they should wait. They can't think long term. Here's what that theory gets wrong. It assumes the problem is the person. Science says otherwise. I am Mr. B. This is Broke by Design. Today we explore how poverty influences the human mind. Picture two people taking the same test, same questions, same time, same room. One person worries about nothing in particular going into it. The other received an unexpected bill that morning, the kind that makes you calculate and recalculate in the back of your mind all day. The first person scores normally. The second scores the equivalent of 13 IQ points lower, not because they are less intelligent, not because they didn't try, but because part of their mind was already occupied, running background calculations on a problem that wouldn't go away. This is not a metaphor. This is a study, published in Science, conducted at Harvard and Princeton, and it changes everything about how we think about poverty and decision-making. The question isn't why poor people make bad decisions. The question is, what does being poor do to the brain, and who decided that was the individual's problem? In 2013, researchers Senhil Mullainathan and Eldar Shafir published a book called Scarcity: Why Having Too Little Means So Much. It became one of the most important works in behavioral economics of the last 2 decades. The central finding was simple and devastating. Scarcity, the feeling of not having enough, doesn't just make life harder, it physically changes how the brain works. They called it bandwidth. Mental bandwidth is your cognitive capacity, the mental space available for thinking, planning, problem-solving, and making decisions. And scarcity consumes it. When a poor person is asked to think about a financial problem, it reduces their cognitive performance immediately, and the impact is similar to losing an entire night's sleep or a 13-point drop in IQ. The wealthy person presented with the same financial scenario shows no such drop, because for them it isn't a crisis, it's a calculation. The mental background noise simply doesn't activate. Here's what's really happening, broken down into 4 mechanisms. First, the bandwidth tax. Every financial worry you carry takes up cognitive space. Which bill gets paid? Which gets deferred? Whether the account will cover the direct debit? Whether asking for a raise is worth the risk? These are not idle thoughts. They are active calculations running constantly, and they consume the same mental resources you need for everything else. Focus, planning, patience, impulse control. All of it draws from the same limited pool. Second, tunneling. Scarcity leads to attentional shifts. People experiencing scarcity become intensely focused on pressing immediate needs. This sounds like a feature. In the short term, it is. Urgent problems get solved. But tunneling has a cost. The things outside the tunnel become invisible. The long-term savings plan, the job application, the health checkup, the relationship that needs attention. All of it falls outside the tunnel, not because the person doesn't care, because the mind has prioritized survival. Third, the present bias trap. Financial scarcity forces people into short-term thinking as opposed to long-term planning, because when you're broke, the future is genuinely less relevant than right now. This is rational. If you don't know whether you can make rent this week, investing in a pension feels absurd. The scarcity mindset didn't make you irrational. It correctly identified what actually matters in your situation. Fourth, the error multiplier. If you live in poverty, you're more error-prone, and errors cost you more dearly. It's hard to find a way out. Everyone makes mistakes, but when you have financial slack, savings, credit, support, mistakes are recoverable. A missed payment is an inconvenience. A minor renewal is a minor cost. When you have no slack, the same mistake can cascade. A missed payment becomes a fee. A fee becomes a shortfall. A shortfall becomes an overdraft. The exact same error carries a completely different weight depending on where you start. Now, here's the part that matters most. The narrative that poor people make bad decisions because of personal failings, laziness, impulsiveness, lack of discipline, is enormously useful to the people who profit from those decisions. Payday lenders charge 300% interest rates. Their business model depends on repeat borrowing. Scarcity can lead people to overborrow. The tunneling effect makes the immediate relief of a loan feel more real than the future cost of the interest. That is not a character flaw. That is a predictable psychological response to financial pressure, and an entire industry was built on it. Credit card companies design minimum payment structures that maximize long-term debt. Rent-to-own stores spread costs into weekly amounts that feel manageable. Late fee structures penalize the moments of cognitive overload that poverty reliably produces. Every one of these business models is more profitable when the customer is under financial stress. The psychology of scarcity doesn't just explain why poor people struggle, it explains why certain industries need them to keep struggling. Let's bring this into the real world. A man works a long shift. He gets home late. He is tired, not lazy, tired. His bandwidth is depleted before he even sits down. There is a letter on the table. It is from his bank. There is also an email from his landlord, and his phone shows a reminder about a bill due tomorrow that he forgot about. In the next 20 minutes, he has to make 3 financial decisions under stress with incomplete information while his cognitive capacity is running on empty. He makes one mistake, not because he's stupid, because he's human, and humans under cognitive load make more errors. The mistake costs him a late fee. The late fee creates a shortfall. The shortfall triggers an overdraft. By the end of the week, he's further behind than he was at the start, despite working, despite trying, despite doing almost everything right. This is what the bandwidth tax looks like in a real life. Not laziness, not poor character. Cognitive load accumulated across days, weeks, and years of financial scarcity, and a system designed to penalize every moment of it. The man is not failing the system is working exactly as designed. Here's what the science actually tells us. The behaviors that look like poor decision-making from the outside are often rational responses to impossible conditions from the inside. Tunneling is survival. Present bias is correct prioritization when the future is uncertain. Short-term borrowing makes sense when the alternative is going without. The problem is not the mind. The problem is the load placed on it, and that distinction matters enormously, because it means the solution is not to fix poor people, it is to reduce the load. Some of that is individual. Knowing the tunneling effect means you can build reminders for the things outside the tunnel. Automating savings, even small amounts, removes a decision from the bandwidth tax. Finding a credit union instead of a payday lender reduces the penalty for the inevitable moments of cognitive overload. But the deeper solution is structural. Stable income reduces the bandwidth tax. Capped fees reduce the error multiplier. Accessible credit reduces tunneling. The scarcity mindset isn't a fixed personality trait. It's shaped by circumstances, and that means it can be changed. The more we understand the dynamics of how scarcity works upon the human mind, the more likely we are to find ways to avoid or alleviate the scarcity trap. You were not born with a broken decision-making system. You were put in situations that exhaust the same mental resources everyone depends on. So yes, it looks like bad decisions, but it's really human behavior under extreme pressure. With a mind running the same background calculations every single day, 13 IQ points, gone. Not from lack of intelligence, because everything is stretched too thin. The brain wasn't broken, the conditions were. The glasses are still cracked, but the picture is getting clearer. Subscribe. It costs nothing, which, ironically, is uncommon. I am Mr. B. The next episode promises to be explosive.